Alright, all my Blue Glow followers and fans out there, and if you're new, welcome to the channel. This is just a little teaser video today as I get started on this series, and I imagine it'll take some time to finish what I've got put in motion here at this point in time. But let's talk a little bit about what we've got here. I had a gentleman reach out to me a while back, and he basically said, hey Mark, I've unearthed a set of McIntosh gear that I'd really like to get restored, and he's been patiently waiting for a long time, and finally we got these things into the queue and in here on the bench. But the way the story goes, if I'm not mistaken, he basically is an audio guy, and he unearthed these from a relative who had them stored in a barn or building or something for many years, and they were in fairly rough cosmetic shape. So the gentleman that, while he was waiting in my queue to be able to get them to me and get them restored while I kind of had him on the cool burner, he went through the effort, and we swapped some emails along the way of doing the research into how to do the cosmetic restorations on these units. And if you look at them, I mean, they turned out beautifully. Nice polished brass faces, really nice clean chrome on these units. All in all, they turned out really nice. When I met the individual, he was telling me how rough they still looked, and I said, no, I see a lot of old vintage McIntosh gear, and relative to a lot of it, this stuff here looks really good. But the beauty of these brass faceplates on these is all the lettering is recessed, and then the paint is down inside of those recessed areas. So polishing these up is a fairly easy task, and you just have to get all the knobs off and can get to them and whatnot. Very different than, say, a Fisher 500 or 800 type unit where the lettering is on top, and if you rub a little bit too much, it comes right off. Now, on the flip side, the amplifiers on the back, those are stencil painted on the top, and if you're not careful, you'll easily take off the paint with the when you're cleaning them. Sorry, my dog came to visit. At any rate, what I'm going to do here, and just in case you're wondering what these are, so in the back here we have a pair of McIntosh MC30 amplifiers. So each of these is basically a 30-watt mono amplifier, and if you put the two of them together, you would have a stereo pair then of 30 watts per channel amplifier, which would be equivalent to a 60-watt stereo amplifier. You can see here on the front, and maybe I can zoom in so you can actually see that. Here on the front, it has a little logo on it, and it says McIntosh Clinic Performance Center. So these have been to the McIntosh lab back in the day. And it says date of birth, and it's the same for both amplifiers. It's 4/7/1971. So these things are just a year younger than I am or whatnot here. And then and by the way, both of these look to be, from what I can tell, pretty much all original. I know they still have the original McIntosh black plate RCA output tubes in them. I noticed there's a few Telefunkens here, but there are some GE tubes in the mix here. So it's possible a few of the smaller signal tubes have been swapped out along the way. You also have here in front of it what you would think would be a pair of McIntosh C8 preamps, but you're getting close, but not exactly. Okay, this is a plain C8 amplifier, and if you notice here on the front, you got a little jewel light, and you basically have mono controls. So this mono amplifier will control this mono preamp will control this mono amplifier behind it. However, over here on this side, what we have is a McIntosh C8-S preamplifier, which stands for stereo pass-through. So it's basically a C8 preamp in a similar chassis, but it also has some additional stereo controls. Now, it is still a mono preamplifier, but what happens here is it has provisions when you use a C8 and a C8S for you to feed the output of the C8S into the input here of this, the output of the C8 into the input of the C8S back over into this amplifier, and then the output of this one preamp into this amplifier. And so what you gain by that is you get some stereo controls over here, okay? You then have stereo balance, stereo volume, things of that nature. So it keeps you from, I mean, sure, you still get treble and bass over here and whatnot, treble and bass over here, but over here it gives you the ability to not have to control both units, try to both match up both volume knobs, whatnot. It lets you do that. So think of this as the master control over here, and think of this as kind of the slave unit, and then they end up driving these two units over here. So let's talk about how I'm going to break this video series up a little bit, okay? I'm going to do a series on the amplifiers as a pair, so you'll see that as an MC30 restoration video, and I might break that up into two parts. The first one being kind of the bench test, evaluating the units, figuring out what all they need, making a parts list so we can actually order parts, and probably a schematic walkthrough at that point. And then once we get the parts in for these, we will then do the restoration of those two units, likely in a second video. But these two I'm going to break up into two separate videos. I'm going to do a restoration of the C8, which might be two videos. One where we visually go through it, whether we inspect it, we do the bench testing. I can already tell you here my visual inspection says that power cord will shock you to death and must be replaced. It is dry rotted all over. And what will happen then is I'll split this into two parts, all the way up to ordering the parts and walking you through a schematic walkthrough, and then we'll do the actual restoration in the second video, and then the same story over here. So at the end of the day, you're likely to see 6 videos that comprise this, and it'll kind of be broken up into 3 sets of 2 videos. Now, these units are designed to feed each other. Like this C8 here is designed to feed the MC30 behind it with an umbilical cord, and you don't have to use RCA jacks. You do have to do a little bit of trickery here when you use the C8S, and I'll walk you through that when we get into the preamps a little more. But it's interesting, the power supplies in the tube amplifiers actually provide the high voltage for the tubes in these units, okay? So these units will not work, either one of them, as a standalone unit. And you're like, well, Mark, I see here that they have a power cord. Why would it not work as a standalone unit? Surely it has a power supply in it. Well, this power cord goes in and feeds a selenium rectifier and a capacitor, basically a little circuit, that basically provides DC voltage to the filaments of the 3 tubes in this unit. Same thing over here. But that power supply does not feed the rest of the unit. So it only provides the heater or filament voltage, doesn't provide the high voltage, doesn't provide the screen voltage, things of that nature that you would need to drive these. You have to get that from the MC30. So it's interesting, these things are relatively cheap on the used market because of that, because they're not standalone units. Now there is a version called the C8P, and it has built-in power supplies, and those can be used as standalone units. Or you can either buy or build a separate standalone power supply unit to power these if you are not using them with a pair of McIntosh amplifiers that were capable of feeding the power. So you're feeding power back from the amplifier to the preamp via this, and you're also feeding your signal, your small signal, from the preamplifier to the amplifier via these umbilical cords. So pretty neat, concise little setup if you had this whole setup put together. This is kind of a McIntosh owner's dream here, to be honest, and I would love to own this whole set myself. I think it's kind of an in-game setup in my opinion. But we're going to go through. I sat down with the owner and had lunch with him when I picked these up, and we talked through a lot of things. And he basically, at the end of the day, I gave him a lot of options on, we could go really high end, we could just fix what's wrong, we could do complete restorations and whatnot. And at the end of it all, basically what he said to me was, Mark, please take these 2 units and do them as if they were your own. So That means I'm going to treat these just like my own, and I would put the things in them I would do if they were my own. So they will certainly get my love and attention, and I will treat them as such. So stay tuned. It may take me 2 months, honestly, to get all these videos complete. I've got a good bit of travel ahead of me work-wise. But I wanted to at least get this teaser video out there, and I wanted to at least maybe over the next few days or week get into them and get parts ordered that I need. So while I'm waiting on parts, maybe I could be traveling, and then when I get back, complete the restoration. So anyway, stay tuned, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this teaser, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I promise you that. Thanks for watching, everybody.